The kind of evidence that will get investors excited will also get the CFO at your large partner excited. It also will help your champion help get budget for the next step for scaling up, because they can say, I can explain it not only that is clinically exciting to me, but I can also explain it with evidence that will resonate with my other stakeholders who set the budgets for me. Obviously, it's not that we turn medicine into something purely money oriented, but it will help if you think about what will not only get my clinical champion excited, but what will be his financial backer or the person who needs to ask for budget for the next phase also excited. So I think you should think about that from day one.
Welcome, MedTech Gurus. Today, as I mentioned in the introduction, we have an outstanding guest with us, Marco Smit, a successful serial entrepreneur and executive in life sciences, including roles at Roche and in Genentech. He joins us today to tackle one of the biggest questions in healthcare innovation, and that is, why are billions being poured into AI, yet so few companies achieve real results? Marco has founded and led multiple startups, including Gassund and CareSyntax, and is currently with Dome Labs and brings a wealth of experience in helping healthcare and life sciences companies rethink how they approach AI. Today, he'll share his insights on overcoming pilot fatigue, navigating the complex AI regulatory landscape, and unlocking scalable innovation for meaningful ROI. Hey, Marco, are you ready to be our guru today?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Oh, it's great to have you. So tell us something fun or interesting about yourself or your family so we can get to know you a little better.
Oh, sure. Yeah, my family is actually quite interesting right now. I have teenage twins, one boy, one girl. So, and they're rising juniors. So they are having a very interesting summer. This is getting serious now, right? Looking forward towards college. And then I have two other kids, which is basically my two dogs. I have a Cavalier, Bart, after Bart Simpson, and a Australian Labradoodle called Gaston, officially from Beauty and the Beast, but we call him Gussie because he's such a goofball. And they're like their own little family, the kids and the kids, the human ones and the animal ones.
I love it. I love it. Sounds like a really active family. What are the twins into? Are they sports, music, arts? What are they doing these days?
Sports, academics, volunteering, actually. So my kids do a lot of volunteering, and then my son is very much into AI, as a matter of fact. So
yeah. Sounds like an active household, to be sure.
Yes, never a dull day.
Yeah, right. So, Marco, as we discussed in the introduction, I mean, you've indicated that despite billions of dollars being invested in AI across healthcare and life sciences, most organizations are still stuck in pilot projects. So, I'm curious why you think there's such a gap between ambition and transformation. Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things, right? So there are two parts. First of all, the problem is not necessarily with the idea of a pilot, right? So if a pilot is really a phase as a pre-commitment, so at CareSyntax, for example, we would do a lot of discussions with customers and we say, this is the whole program, but we'll start with a pilot phase to make sure we really kind of nail down some uncertainties that we have. So that's okay to use a pilot in that situation. Or sometimes it's a transition phase. Some companies I worked with, the product is not entirely clear, ready yet. And so we do a pilot as, again, a startup, as a kind of an entry point towards what you want to do in terms of scaling afterwards. However, many pilots are not set up that way. And recently I was at a conference here at Stanford for CHAI, the Coalition for Healthcare AI. And there was one of the senior leaders from Anthropic there who mentioned that his favorite phrase was think big, start small, and move fast. And I think what we see in terms of pilotitis is we often in healthcare don't get beyond the start small. We may do some thinking big, then we start small, and then we just stay small. I think one part is oftentimes when we start the pilot becomes the objective, and there's not necessarily a mechanism set up to automatically move fast to the next phase. So it's almost we negotiate a contract, do the pilot, then we negotiate the next start. And so it's kind of start, stop. Try to get a mechanism in place to say, if we hit our marks, then this will trigger the following actions. That often doesn't happen. And then I think the second part, there's a larger problem in terms of for AI to scale, both parties, the small one and the big one, need to deal with three dimensions of AI governance, which is the data and system readiness needs to be there. So I can do a pilot completely outside of the system, see how it works, and then maybe start worrying about data and system readiness. If you do it that way, it will unfortunately lead to that start-stop motion that I just mentioned about. And so don't do that if you can avoid it. Second of all, responsible AI. So it's one thing, again, to do something in a sandbox. But if it doesn't meet the requirements for safety, etc., then of the large organization, it will not get out of the sandbox. And the third part is needs to be strategic. So many pilots are kind of a flyer or effectively postponement of a real commitment. So it's a soft commitment, and that can really again then lead to harder. It's a harder time to justify why to scale up. So I think those are real issues with a lot of the pilots these days.
Yeah, that's a nice summary, and I actually wrote down pilotitis. I like that term, right? That was really really good. I enjoyed that. But thinking about that strategic piece, right? I mean, that sometimes takes a higher level of planning. And is it really just kind of coming off the drawing board and then trying to think about how we're going to turn this into a commercial proposition? Is that where some of the gap is at?
There's that, but I think also sometimes what will happen is the people who are ultimately driving many of the AI pilots are in the data science teams, and what you really need to look for is who else do they need to engage post pilot. So, and it's easy to say I just want to lock my win in and get my pilot, and so I just need to deal with the data science team. But the strategic intelligence is to say once we do this, what path are we setting ourselves on, and if so, who are the other individuals we are depending on to be excited about the pilot.
Yeah.
And so that strategic intelligence is important, and then you can engage them both in pilot design while the pilot is going on, and in the pushing for the automatic continuation post pilot. So the strategic intelligence is very important, but it's often and it's often also hard because in healthcare and life sciences, when I worked at Roche, your schedule was often booked like 2 weeks, 3 weeks out, right? So you're under a lot of time pressure, and you don't necessarily have the time to engage in these strategic discussions unless both sides are really clear about what they want. And oftentimes that's not the case.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's helpful, which kind of leads into my next question too, because with your experience, I'm wondering, with the various models and process challenges out there, what are the companies facing really when they try to integrate AI at scale? Are there any insights you can provide us there?
yeah, absolutely. So I think there are a couple of mental model issues. I think number one, there are maybe three mental model issues, and then one is fourth one is more other challenges. So mental models, I think there is always an attempt to overfit to what I would call legacy mental models. I will not mention the company, but when I worked with a large pharma company, we were building software, and the software needed obviously updates almost every 30 days, 60 days. But the mental model was that we only do releases twice a year, so you need to only do releases twice a year instead of once a month. And so similar here with AI, because AI is also amorphous and difficult, and so evolving so quickly. If you try to put it into a legacy mental model, it's going to be very hard to make work. And final note on that is that even I remember Satya Nadella in his book about how he took over as CEO of Microsoft said the mental model that they used for cloud was how many more Microsoft Windows licenses will it sell? And that was a complete wrong mental model, right? And so let's not do that, make that same mistake in healthcare and life sciences as well. I think second part is there's very much in healthcare and life sciences, we have a 5-year strategy planning cycle, and then we have implementation, and it's strategy versus implementation. But that is not how it can work in AI. AI is way too fluid for that. So we need to have a more agile approach. We need to say their strategy, given the current availability of the tools and capabilities of it, then we start on the implementation, and then we need to look at an evaluation and adaptation. So how are we learning? Have the possibilities of the technology changed? Have our use cases changed? So there needs to be a more dynamic and not such a static strategy implementation model. On that note, I think on that third part about adaptation and evaluation, we need to learn how to learn. The space moves so fast that there's even the people who are building the tech cannot predict what will happen in 6 months or 12 months. So you can't have any decision making process or success process that requires 12 to 24 months of stability. You need to learn how to learn all the time. That's very important. And then finally, in terms of the challenges, that's what I just mentioned. The opportunities are on the intersections. AI should not be a data science activity. It should be an integrated activity. And needs alignment of the people dynamics, the human AI interaction that needs to be taught and developed and learned. This is a very important part that Dome Labs focuses on. The data layer, the tech infrastructure that allows that learning to learn and this agility. Then AI evaluation, the National AI Action Plan that the White House just launched a week ago, talks about the whole science that needs to be built and an ecosystem needs to be built around AI evaluation. I very strongly concur with that. I think we're in the early innings of developing our knowledge about how to evaluate AI. And we really need to do that as a science. Executive support, and then I think decision makers have little experience with AI and AI adoption, and I think those are all things that are challenging to get AI right within healthcare and life sciences.
Yeah, thank you for that overview. And you made me think that, with the pace of this and how quickly it's changing, right? You've worked at both large organizations and startups, right? And large organizations are known to be, a little more bureaucratic and slower moving than startups, but startups are usually underfunded and struggle with, some of the dollars for research. So in your opinion, what size of companies or what sectors are doing better than their peers in scaling AI, and perhaps why is that?
Yes, that's a good question. So I think couple of things to say. So I think within life sciences, we have some areas. I think in drug discovery, there has been a lot of innovation by smaller companies. They've grown very fast in silico medicine, Recursion, others. Have grown very fast. I think on the commercialization side within healthcare and life sciences has also worked very well, particularly on the pharmaceutical side. I think what has not yet worked is the drug development side, the clinical trials. There's a lot of innovation, but not a lot of innovation adoption at this point, I think. When it comes to where to focus, I think a couple of comments to make. One is if you think about it as a 2x2, in terms of what am I using AI for? Is it for making existing processes better? Or am I trying to invent whole new processes, new use cases? And number two is, do I have an infrastructure, a technology infrastructure, and human infrastructure that supports or hurts this goal? I think you'll see that 90% of the work today is in existing processes. We're just using AI to make administrative processes easier, for example, in healthcare. And with infrastructure that is, not so helpful, or maybe a little bit helpful, but it's usually more on the hurting side than the helping side. And that's what the AI companies come in and say, I will overcome your infrastructure and I will put like a bridge, and I'll put something in that overcomes these hurdles. So that's, I think, where the opportunities are to move beyond that and to go towards clinical and new use cases. So we move from bottom left to top right. I would say focus on where the real industry gaps are. Just yesterday, I was on a call with leading folks from, let's say, a top 3 cancer institute in the US and one of the 2 largest companies in the US. And they really are describing, guys, we want to do this. And we have been scouring the market. Are there startups that do this? And you hear others, no, we've been looking at it as well. Maybe we need to fill this gap ourselves. So what is nobody doing that everybody will need? I think is very important for us to start to focus on. And I would say also this new National AI Action Plan that came out, look at the LMS tailwinds. There are some blind spots in there that large incumbents are not going to be good at exploiting, and startups should be much better at exploiting. So I'd say study it. There's a ton of content in there, and lots of unknowns as well. So lots
Yeah.
of, we want to achieve regulatory sandbox. Like, all
Yeah.
right, everyone would love that, but how do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah, interesting, and thank you for that. And you touched on something I was going to talk about next too, and that you mentioned the regulatory landscape, right, for AI and healthcare especially. Seems like it can be very confusing to folks out there. How should organizations navigate this complexity to accelerate their progress? Do you have any thoughts or insights for us there?
Yes, I would say there are four points to that. So number one, allocate resources to this, right? Deal with this strategically. Don't just be reactive to it. I see many startups, even startup that recently one of Gassund's customers who raised more than $100 million. They still are approaching regulatory in a very kind of tactical fashion. I would say try to be more strategically proactive about this, because if your competitors are reactive and you are proactive, you can
Mhm.
get a head start here. And there's a lot of fluidity currently right now in the regulatory environment. Second, because there is likely to be a lot of changes in the regulatory environment and standard setting, etc., I would say start integrating and permeate FDA grade track and trace across the life cycle, from inception to going to the FDA to monitoring and revalidating. That is something that is often not done, because hey, there's more friction. Hey, it costs money. Why don't we kind of play it fast and loose until we're absolutely sure we're going to the FDA? But by then, you need to maybe redo prior work. So don't do that. Permeate the track and trace across the whole life cycle.
Mhm.
Third, engage the FDA. Don't avoid. And I think this is an easier set. This is where startups, to your point, startups may have an advantage. I see a lot of large pharma companies treat engaging with FDA like like a lawsuit. You don't ask a question already, you know the answer, right? So, but what we see as startups who are working on the frontier is that the FDA is searching for expertise and they want to engage with you in your about your expertise. They're not there to do a gotcha.
Mhm.
Engage the FDA, don't avoid it. And finally, I think this is something that's really important. Have a more active and transparent evidence strategy. Evidence of benefits, evidence of risk management is still often an afterthought, and it shouldn't be an afterthought. It really should be front and center of everything that you're doing.
Yeah, that's really I love that evidence strategy, right? Because that's I think that not only will help you with the FDA, but I think down the road it would also help with like value analysis teams, because we're so value based in healthcare now, right? So it's in a way you're kind of doing that pre work, but it's also post work too.
Correct. And I
Yeah.
think this is what happens a lot if you want to ultimately make money and turn this into a business and not just a science project. You're continuously need to build evidence. And again, the more you do it from the get go, the easier it is to maintain it, and the stronger your base is when you go out to the market. I saw recently on LinkedIn an article. Superpower is a company that raised a lot of money in the longevity space, and basically what I heard from the people who were posting is like, I think this is all hype. And, you're going to always get these questions. Is this hype? Is this real? So be ready and say, actually, we thought about that question. We already have an evidence strategy. And here's what the evidence that tells us that is not hype only. So that's really important because you're going to have that skepticism for lots of different companies.
Yeah, that's interesting because I was doing some of my research for this podcast in looking at what you've done. You've mentioned in the past that many AI developers underestimate the challenges of bringing their models to the market in healthcare, and kind of relates to that maybe that hype question too that you just talked about. So, what are some of the hidden pitfalls that some of these companies and developers face? Can you give us some insights into that?
Yeah, I think well, the starting point I think is that many AI startups in particular, they treat AI as kind of a scientific innovation primarily, and they don't think it all the way through to what does it take to get adoption and make the impact in the market in the clinic that I want. Right, ultimately. if I truly have scientific innovation and a powerful I want that to impact patients in a positive way. And so that's often not thought through all the way. And the FDA, it was announced, I think, in alignment with this National AI Action Plan. But the FDA has included a resource that's called the Digital Health Regulatory Accelerator. And this is a great resource to go to because it actually talks about everything from ideation to FDA trial to post-market management. And just to put it in perspective, it has something like, 20 boxes or something like that for you to take care of. And I would say that many startups, once it gets too close to the FDA, their product roadmap or their activities start to kind of become fuzzy, right? And so you don't want to do that. So look at the resources that are available, like this resource index for digital health device innovators. That is very new, brand new, a week old, and it gives you a very good sense of what to take care of. But think about that as I don't just want to build a great product or a great AI model, but I want to see it in hands of users. And I think the one other part too that I see is I won't mention names, but a large medical center known to be a prime innovator in AI. What I hear from multiple people, they have more than 100 models that they have in the clinic, but only about 15 to 20% of those are actually maintained. And so this is exactly this lack of full life cycle approach. Because what happens is the model is built, it's great, it gets used for a while, it starts to drift or maybe have some other problems. And the clinicians say it's no longer useful, I just stop using it. They're not going to tell the developer how to fix it. And unless you have that full cycle and awareness and feedback, like, hey, that's the reason why usage is going down, then you don't fix it. And now it just becomes a zombie AI. So you don't want to have that, right? So close the full loop and don't just have that feedback and evaluation early on, have the evaluation throughout the full life cycle and be responsive to that.
Yeah, it sounds like a little bit of a victim of the shiny object syndrome almost, right? In the sense of, hey, this would be cool, and then it doesn't have the utility, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, ultimately, clinicians, I think what we're going to see as well, and this goes also to the evidence strategy comment from earlier, we're spending a ton of money right now on AI because everyone believes AI is inevitable and everyone wants to be first. But this spending without evidence of ROI and benefit is not going to continue on forever. So this is really important for people to think about it. How do I avoid the shiny object or being accused of being a shiny object and having no response to it? Right. So you should be ready for that accusation.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. So, and with that, Marco, a lot of our listeners are early stage med tech companies and entrepreneurs. I'm wondering, what insights you can share with them about, how do you foster this innovation, right? Because we kind of touched on you can bring the innovation and it just kind of dies or gets left as an orphan, if you will. So how do you take that innovation and then build a startup that can scale in today's environment? Do you have a blueprint or some thoughts for us there in terms of what we can be thinking about?
Well, I think there's not one blueprint, right? I think there are many blueprints for this, but I would certainly say that it's very important to really think about two parts. One is to solicit feedback as early as possible. Ultimately your AI is only as powerful as it's being used. So look at the users. The counter to that is, I think, Daniel Yang from KP, from Kaiser Permanente, and Nigam Shah from Stanford were also saying, yes, but we do run the risk of building faster horses, right? Henry Ford said, if I ask the horse and carriage people what they want, they'll say a faster horse, right? So you need to listen, but understand that you know the technology potential better than anybody else. So if you say they have an underlying issue or problem that they're trying to solve, be able to look around their surface level feedback to what you really can do and be able to really surprise people. I think the second part too is, as I said earlier, because building startups is hard and this technology is moving really fast, and you see how much the open AIs and so on are getting in terms of money. So focus on real industry bottlenecks, right? So don't just do small problems. We've seen this with companies who built wrappers around ChatGPT 1 or 2 or anything like that. And then by the next version, because the problem was not an industry bottleneck, it was just a small add-on, the next version of ChatGPT kind of swallowed it whole. So don't do that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because understanding that, right, and that's where the immersion to your end user is so important, right, to make sure what you have is a real bottleneck, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes.
yeah, yeah. That's helpful. So, you touched on the money end of this, right, and raising the amount of money that would take to launch and scale. So finding that right investor is often a critical step for startups, right? So I'm curious, with your experience and now maybe with all the noise going on with AI, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs seeking funding in the healthcare or life science space with us? Do you have any thoughts for us there?
Yeah. So I think a couple of comments. So first of all, and I can say this from two fellow entrepreneurs I spoke to who did go through this whole process. And so one of them said he had to talk to 200 VCs before he got two term sheets, and he landed a 12, I think, $12 or $15 million round. And the other individual landed a similar round, maybe 10, 15 million, both Series A's. And he said he talked to 300 VCs to get two term sheets as well. So the point being, this is going to take a while. So you should start early because you don't want to be running out of money while you're at VC 100 out of that 200 or 300, right? So and number one, and number two is, do understand these are the hit rates that you're going to will be dealing with, right? So be active, be fast, and that's one thing that I would say. So many entrepreneurs, because see it as a distraction from running and building the company. So you start too late, or you don't invest in meeting enough VCs. So that's not what you necessarily don't want to do. That's not what you don't want to do. Second, I think if you're a startup that's in demand, focus on the value of the investor, not just the dollar amounts. Right? I think we've seen many good companies take the wrong money in, and if the investors don't quite understand the space, and with AI, you're going to draw a lot of tourists. You're going to be distracted. I've been in situations where we thought the CEO was doing all kind of illogical things, and then it turns out that he was just responding to the board. And there was one investor who was kind of came onto the board by accident, if you want to call it that way, right? The partner who negotiated the investment left right after putting the money in, and he had no knowledge of our space and our realities, and so it was very destructive and distracting for the CEO and for the company. So be smart about what money you take. Maybe the final comment is, focus on evidence of what you've done so far, evidence of how big this can be, and evidence that you know how to succeed to your next milestones.
Yeah, I love that. There's a couple pieces, and thank you for that summary. That evidence piece was something I was thinking about because we talked earlier on about being strategic, right, and getting that evidence. Is there should As we're gathering that evidence, is that something that should be in the back of the mind of the entrepreneur about how am I going to package this to then put it into a deck to present to investors? Should we be thinking that kind of strategically as we're putting it together?
Yes, I think so. And it's not necessarily about the fundraising angle only, right? Because ultimately, the kind of evidence that will get investors excited will also get the CFO at your large partner excited, right?
Mhm.
It also will help your champion help get budget for the next step for scaling up, because they can say, I can explain it not only that is clinically exciting to me, but I can also explain it with evidence that will resonate with my other stakeholders who set the budgets for me. So I think you should think about that. Obviously, it's not that we turn medicine into something purely money oriented, but it will help if you think about what will not only get my clinical champion excited, but what will be his financial backer or the person who needs to ask for budget for the next phase also excited. So I think you should think about that from day one. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. And I also liked your discussion about finding the right partner, right? The right investing partner, right? Because we've talked about that often on MedTech Gurus. But my gut is, and maybe you can help me out here with AI, I would think that's especially critical because things are moving so fast. And I would think you'd have to have an investor that realizes that we probably don't have all the answers today. And even some of the answers we have may be changing down the road. So it seems like you'd have to have an investing partner that's pretty flexible, but also can provide the right kind of input. Am I heading down the right path with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other part too is what you want to have is exactly that's a very good description. So what you want to have is a partner, investment partner, who's going to stick with you no matter how the twists and turns are. And that's why it's like if you have someone who's a tourist, I think we had at Gassund AI, I remember talking to a VC, and we had several meetings. The CEO of Gassund is based in Germany, so it was all the way out here. And then it turns out that this VC firm was categorizing us as a certain company, let's call it Federated Learning Company. And as a matter of fact, Gassund does not do federated learning, certainly not at that time. So it's like, well, you're trying to fit me into a pattern that I don't fit, which means that we're going to be diverging in terms of expectations over the next 2 years, and you're not going to potentially invest in the next round, which is going to raise questions amongst the next investor. Why are your existing investors not there for the next round?
Yeah.
So that's the other part too, is be really aligned. And that's really important. So don't just say yes just because you can, although it will be enticing if you really need the money.
Yeah, right.
But try to avoid that situation by being proactive and building something that's really exciting. So
Yeah, that's helpful. So, Marco, I'm just kind of curious from your perspective too. I'm wondering if there's startups out there or AI innovations in the market today that you believe really hold true promise. In what should buyers and users of AI be watching for as we move forward?
yes. So let me talk about a few companies that are exciting, and I'll come to Dome Labs as well. So I think in silico medicine is a great company. They are doing AI in drug discovery. Very visionary guy who started this, very successful. We have in vitro medicine here as a competitor to in silico, but I think in silico medicine is doing better. Quant Health is exciting to me. We talked about, I said, clinical development and clinical trials is an area where there's not that much adoption of AI, but Quant Health is trying to basically do clinical trial simulations. I do believe there's opportunity for uptake of that. Of course, if it's just information ultimately, then I think that's not going to be too exciting. It's just another piece of information. But I think if you can take it further than that to help optimize trial design and then potentially other evidence generation down the line, that could be very interesting. So Quant Health, I think they're out of Tel Aviv, out of Israel. But they're very, very successful, technically at least. I don't know about their market uptake. And then Pronuvo, I think I believe in the longevity space, but I think in the longevity market, you need to really. There are going to be companies that are doing things that are more hype than reality. I think Pronuvo is doing things that are more reality than hype, so maybe the opposite. I think they're doing things that are organ specific, that are aging related. They're using AI. They are applying the highest regulatory standards. So I think there's a lot of good things to like about Pronuvo. I think that's very good. And then the last company I'll mention is, of course, Dome Labs. So for I'm going to be the next chief commercial officer. So Dome Labs is really focused on AI governance, and this is the biggest problem that everyone has. And what it means is AI governance. The simple way to put it is, it's the conversion of I see this shiny object of potential from AI, but how do I make that reality in light of I have day-to-day ongoing activities and models and workflows and mental models and infrastructures? How do I adjust my day-to-day reality while do I also skate to where the puck is going to be? Number one. Number two is I love Gen AI. I love agentic AI even. Great. But the cybersecurity risks are going up exponentially with those new waves of technology adoption. How do I move fast without increasing risk? So that is one of the core parts of AI governance. And then the other part too, what Dome Labs makes Dome Labs unique is really Dome Labs. The CEO is a former chief AI officer of United Healthcare. He is very connected to all the chief AI officers, also on the government side, and takes a very strategic approach to this. And finally, also focuses really a lot on the human AI interaction. That's something that we need to build skills around, and that is not being developed. And so I think all of these pieces together allow the healthcare organizations and also life science organizations to approach AI strategically, but also pragmatically. Because talking to McKinsey will be great strategy paper, but nothing practical. Talking to maybe the Accenture or Deloitte will be the opposite. And I think Dome Labs is right in the middle, makes it all happen. It's a really, really exciting company.
Yeah, it sounds like an exciting time for you and your team there. So, Marco, first of all, I'd like to just thank and acknowledge you for all the expertise that you brought us today. I feel like we just scratched the surface and we could probably do 2 or 3 more podcasts on this topic. But if our gurus out there want to learn more about you or Dome Labs, how do we do that? Is there a website? Are you on LinkedIn? How do we learn more about what you and your team are up to?
Yes. So the best thing is to follow me on LinkedIn at this point. My LinkedIn is so linkedin.com/in/Marco-Smit-AI/. So that's the easiest way to reach me and to follow me. I post regularly. I am trying to set up a website, AI Crossroads, so AIXroads.ai. But I haven't gotten around to that yet. And of course, Dome Labs AI, the website itself. But Dome Labs is not communicating a whole lot publicly at this point. So, but you can follow the CEO, Dennis Tronansky. He publishes sometimes as well, and he gives a lot of talks. So he was the opening speaker at HIMSS, and he would be a good one to follow as well.
Yeah, for our listeners out there, I just put you in the search engine in LinkedIn and found you right away. So we'll get to you. So Marco, once again, thank you so much for your insights. I found it really fascinating. Appreciate your time and your expertise today.
All right, thank you. I really appreciate it as well.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to MedTech Gurus. I am Sylvester Harris, your MC. If you want to learn more about Tom and his consulting services, you can go to www.pctmedical.com or email Tom at tom@pctmedical.com. Now, I can be reached at Sylvester Harris, that's SylvesterHarris 5048@gmail.com. And I'd be pleased to discuss any voiceover work that you may want for your company or broadcast. Hey, thanks so much for listening, and catch us on the next episode of MedTech Gurus.